Around 33% of all children suffer sexual abuse in South Africa. So this narrative kind of developed, I must be the freak, there's something wrong with me, where you feel so alone and so isolated. Kids become vulnerable, so they're out looking for that attention and the praise that we often don't get at home. I was abused as a child, so it is a real fear that you would do the same to your child.
Becoming a parent is a massive change. It's a massive disruption in your life. But sometimes we only focus on moms. Sometimes we don't focus on dads. And one of the predictors of postpartum depression actually comes from early childhood trauma. So today I've invited Martin. He's the author of a book called The Pumpkin Ban, and he is also the founder of Matrix Man, which helps men overcome the trauma of sexual abuse. Now, the challenge that we have with this kind of thing is that as soon as you become a parent, sometimes those hidden traumas, which you thought you've forgotten, which you thought you healed from, jump up into your new parenting space. And that's where a lot of dads actually struggle. So Martin, welcome to the show.
Hi. I had to smile at the introduction because those things that you've forgotten about, and they jump up, and yes, they do. Yes, and thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
So you were a victim of sexual abuse for a significant amount of your teenage years, from 13 to about 19 years old.
5 to, well, earlier. I mean, mummy was a saint.
So you had different kinds of abuse, came from different aspects. And so that was psychologically a very unsafe place for you to be in. But people didn't really talk about sexual abuse for boys.
Well, we still don't, isn't it? We've kind of created this world where trauma is genderized, especially sexual trauma. And it's not, I mean, in South Africa, we know that as many boys as girls are being sexually abused. And so around 33% of all children suffer sexual abuse in South Africa. And we need to get rid of this construct that it's in certain classes or in certain races. It's across the board. It's right across the board. And we also need to get rid of this construct that the perpetrators are generally men, because that's not always the case, right? Especially with boys, the majority of the perpetrators are in fact women. 20% of those being teachers. So, yeah, I mean, you told me about a friend of yours whose son committed suicide because he was sexually abused by a teacher. Around 33% of all children suffer sexual abuse in South Africa. And female, that it was a female teacher that he'd suffered with. And again, you get trapped in this world where, because we don't talk about it, I must be the freak, there's something wrong with me. So I'm the only one that it's happening to, and therefore you feel so alone and so isolated. And for, sadly, many of them, the only solution is to take their lives.
So one of the challenges that I find is that when you've had any kind of trauma or abuse, the pattern can start re-emerging. I'm a second-generation adoptee, so that means that my mother was given up for adoption, and then she in turn adopted me, and so there's that cycle. So when I had my first child, when I found out I was pregnant, a lot of people said to me, just give the baby up for adoption, because I didn't have any parenting model on how you're supposed to raise a baby, because my mother never had a baby of her own. So when that moment of stress came from, I started defaulting to behaviorisms that I'd learned from my parents, bad ways of coping with stress. And I still remember there was this one day, you and I've had a chat about this, is that my father had a very specific way of dealing with dinner time, and he would freak out at me all the time. Most of my tearful moments with my dad were remembering sitting at the table with him shouting at me. And so there was a day where my daughter wasn't eating, and I didn't understand that sticking your tongue out like that prevents choking. And I just was so triggered, and I took this porridge bowl and I flung it against the wall, and there was porridge dripping all over the place. And I thought to myself, I've become my father. I let go. I acted on impulse, and my father was an exceptionally good man. It was just that he'd been traumatized at the table, and so he had that behaviorism that he didn't know how to stop, and I was on the path to doing that as well. Now, the same happens with sexual abuse.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you mentioned a story in your book where you were changing your baby's nappy and there was the good Martin and the evil Martin on the shoulder. Tell us about that
It
part.
was like a Tintin comic, you know, the devil and the angel. I was changing, and this devil popped up on my shoulder and said to me, "Oh, you're going to hurt her. You're going to stick your finger in there, you know." And then this little angel popped up and said, "No, you won't. You love her too much." And then the devil was like, "Oh, come on, man. It happened to you. You're going to do it again." And, you know, that sort of thing. But I think, you know, largely it's a societal perception because up until that point, anybody that was caught in pedophilia and they went through a court case, they would always turn around at the end of the whole thing and go, "Well, I was abused as a child." So this narrative kind of developed that, well, all victims become perpetrators, right? It didn't differentiate the well, only a small percentage of perpetrators, victims become perpetrators. It kind of just painted, you know, we're very good at painting all people with one brush. We tar everybody with the same brush. So, but you grow up with that narrative and then that fear is instilled in you. So it is a very raw, very real fear that you would do the same to your child, no matter how much you love them, you know. And I think, again, another issue with sexual abuse is that not all of it is violent. Not all of it is terrible. You know, some of it is in fact very loving and very caring and very attentive. And that's what predators use. They look for children who are vulnerable because they're not getting specific things at home. So they then offer them those things. So when you go into a pedophile's house, you'll see there's like gaming stations and all sorts of things that kids love, and they will always have their age group that they favor, and they will provide everything that those kids need because society again sells this construct that you got to play the Roblox and you got to have the PlayStation and you got to have the, you know, all these things, the smartphones, and these guys provide all of that. And coupled to that is the attention and the praise that we often don't get at home, right? So my mom is a narcissist. Everything I did had to make her look good. If I didn't make her look good, then I would get punished. If I did make her look good, then I would get rewarded, right? But I never got love. I never got hugged. I never got kissed. I never got praised. I never got the pat on the back. "Well done, my son. You're amazing." I was always kept kind of suppressed. I was there to make her look good. And I was prompted on what to say and when to say it so that she could look like this incredible mother. And even today, a lot of people go to me, "Your mom did that? Really? She was an amazing person." I go, "Yeah, to you maybe, but to me it was a different story at home." So kids become vulnerable because of that sort of thing. So they're out looking for that love, nurturing, and security. Those are the three. Nurturing would be like education, food, physical nurturing, all that sort of stuff. Love is the hugs, the kisses, the praise, all that sort of stuff. That's obvious. And the security, a place to stay, clothes to wear, knowing that dad will protect me, mom will protect me, and I'll be safe. Take away one of those pillars, they'll try and find that outside of the home. And there's enough people out there that will teach them, but for the wrong reasons. Yeah.
And I also notice, I mean, your particular speciality is within the male area, but I know that with girls, you know, girl children need physical love, and they need it from their father. Yes. They need it to be safe, that they know that I can get a hug, and the hug doesn't mean more than that.
More than that, it's just the hug.
And so when they don't get that physical affection, when they don't get their praise, they are so vulnerable to predators out there who know to use it as a tool. They are very, very smart in knowing what you need. And kids who are bullied or that kind of thing, and they're stepping out into a space where they don't belong anywhere, but they all of a sudden get this attention from someone else that says, "You know, you're important. I see you. I see what you've been doing." And that's why I always say to dads, you know, be there for your kids. You don't have to be perfect, but you do need to be there. Otherwise, they're going to get that attention.
Absolutely. You know, the thing we often talk about, when we talk about children, right? Look at the societal narratives that we keep getting. So we always have, mommy has baby and then she gets postpartum, quite often gets postpartum depression. We don't talk about the dad and his struggles that he goes through. So daddy doesn't talk about the depression that he goes through. Daddy has pressure. I've brought this being into the world, right? It's my responsibility. I've got to provide for it. I've got to protect it. I've got to nurture it. I've got to care for it, right? Especially in light of the fact that in this country, 33% of men have been through horrific trauma as children, right? They don't have the confidence and the ability to say, well, I'm going to do it, I'm fine, I'm good. So fathers go through depression too, right? But we focus on mommy because, in our minds, mommy is the caregiver, mommy is the nurturer, mom is there to protect and feed and take care of the child. But the reality of the situation is that kid needs both parents.
Exactly.
The reality of the situation is that daddy is there to support both mommy and child, right? And daddy is the one that builds the confidence in the child. And I always use the example of the slide. We go to the park and there's a slide there. And I kind of look at the slide and go, if he falls, a slight concussion, something, he'll survive. He'll be okay, Mommy's like, don't go up the slide. I'm going to wrap you in bubble wrap. And I don't want you to hurt yourself. Be careful. And daddy's like, go boy, go girl, And that aspect of it is what builds confidence in children. If we mollycoddle them too much, they don't have the ability to take bold steps in life. They're going to keep looking back and going, Mommy, what do I do here? Daddy, how do I do this? How do I, and they can't really navigate life. So it's vital that we start changing the story and going like, hang on, people, we need both parents. It's a really important part of the family structure. And build our kids up that way. And daddy needs to be present for mommy, but mommy also needs to be present for daddy because, hey, having children, at my age, I'm going through this again. I've got a 2 and a 5-year-old, right? It's difficult. And I often fall into the trap of being goaded by my son. He's a very intelligent little guy and he gets me riled up. Oh boy, he gets me worked up, and then often I go, and I stop and I go like, oh man, I've just resorted to my childlike state. And I need to be the parent here. So I need to step back, take a breath, calm down, And the food fight, I have the same thing. I had issues, I don't know why. The food we were forced to be at a table. It was often a form of punishment, like your manners aren't good enough, smack, So food trauma is very real. I need to, so often I would stand up and walk away. And my wife knows that if I walk into the kitchen, it's just to decompress and have a breather. And then I come back and I sit down and we go at it again, So yeah, that childhood trauma coming into parenting with your children is real. Well, one thing that I have to point out here, which I feel is very vital in this discussion, is that when your child triggers you to anger, don't look at what they're doing wrong. Look at what triggered you.
Yes.
It's something from your past that you need to deal with. So, because trust me, kids are master manipulators. If they find something that triggers you, they're going to keep punching that button. And you're going to keep getting angry, and they're going to keep punching it, and it's just going to end up in this massive, massive dysfunctional family. And we need to be accountable for what we do, and we need to realize that our childhood trauma has come into the space of raising children. I don't want my kids to grow up in the same way that I did. Definitely not. But unfortunately, the reality is that for the majority of people, they do. In the sexual abuse space, I always say to parents, the first indicator that your child will be sexually abused is that you yourself were a victim. If you were a victim, you're going to overprotect them, you're going to over-mollycoddle them, you're going to force them to go out and experiment in the world, because that's what they want to do. They need to learn, right? And you're going to force them to go out in the world. Once they get into the world, they're going to be vulnerable, and then they're going to become victims.
And they won't have any coping skills.
And they don't have any coping skills.
So the little voices on the shoulders, one of the things that happened with me is I had very intrusive thoughts about that because my baby had been crying and crying and crying night after night, and I've mentioned this several times, is that my brain was telling me if I could just take her outside, hold her under the water, she'd stop crying and I could go back to sleep. And it just seemed incredibly logical at the time. And it took me a really long time to realize that a lot of people have got invasive thoughts.
Yes.
But invasive thoughts are a symptom of what's happening. It is not a definition of your character.
Yes.
Your character is the one that says, I see you. I hear where you're coming from. And I know what you're trying to do. And I'm not going to take that path. Recently I've been doing a lot of media work. And I started getting a huge level of anxiety every time I had one of these radio interviews. And then I realized that when I am in a physical space, when I'm speaking to an audience or that kind of thing, I get a visual feedback. I can see your emotions, your body language, and that kind of thing. So I get that feedback. On the radio, there's no feedback. I don't know if someone is saying a good thing or bad thing, or if they're like annoyed by what I'm saying. And so that fear was the thing that was triggering me. And I had to say to myself, you know what? It's just lots of the same people that I've always spoken to. A certain percentage are going to like me and a certain percentage are not going to like me. And I put my finger in the air and it was almost like the voice was there. And I could say, I see you. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep me the same as I was, but we are stepping into a new season now.
Yes.
And I think for you, you took that bold step. I hear you, but that's not who I choose to be.
Yeah, I think I hear you, but stuff you. I'm moving on. The thing is, we also need to be constantly aware that behaviors don't change easily, especially when you're like my age. You've been practicing that for a long, long time, right? It takes effort to change those behaviors. And you need to put in the work, and you need to get the support and the therapy and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't just happen organically. Yes. You've got to put in the effort. And for a lot of the guys that I support, they'll come to me and say, well, when does this whole therapy thing end? And I go, well, when you die, because our lives are a work in progress, and we need to be constantly waking up and going like, okay, I did okay yesterday. What happened that I don't like? Let's change it. Let's, remodel. Let me be a better version of myself today than I was yesterday. And that's what life is about. And that's what, to me, the essence of therapy is to get that support. And it's the same with parenting, it's a little disclaimer. I was listening to Nikki Bush talking about the parenting and changing parenting, and it just, so much of it landed on me. I was like, I've got to get that book. I really do, because there's just so much in there that both my wife and I can learn from, and grow in is probably the best thing that we can do for our children, right? Instead of bringing that same trauma into my family and repeating that cycle again and again and again and again, because if it doesn't stop with me, it's going to happen to my grandchildren. And if they don't stop it, then it's going to happen, and so on down the line. So learning on a daily basis is vital, and learning from others is vital. There's so many people who have different insights. I come at the world from, I'm a trauma victim, I'm a trauma survivor, and that is my approach to life, right? How did that impact on me? How is that going to impact on my children? What do I need to do to improve it, etc., etc.? And I can tell my story from my perspective. Listening to somebody like Nikki talking about her life and her perspective gives me a completely new perspective on life. And so it goes. So it's awesome, I think. Life is exciting, isn't it? Because we have this ability to just like morph on a daily basis, isn't it? Just by growing and learning.
I think the big thing is to have more conversations like this, that people can say, someone actually understands what I'm going through. Because when all parents live in silence and they don't talk about things, then that's when things become worse. So one of the things that I used to say to my husband is, because he knew that I had such bad postpartum depression with the first child, is I would have to be raw with him. And then I remember there was one day I phoned him. I said, for the life of this child, you better come home now. And I was not joking. He's like, I'm on my way. So to be raw and say these things trigger me when I'm in this space, I'm not myself. I don't like myself very much, and I need someone else to stand in that space that I can just step aside, simmer down, and change my narrative going forward.
You know, the thing is, I keep saying we all have these intrusive thoughts. I mean, there's been times where I've looked at my daughter and I've gone like, you know what, I could just push her face into the bath and all the screaming would stop. This is after like 20 minutes of solid screeching, right? But I go, I think it. So I kind of look at myself as somebody with a very dark sense of humor. Yeah. And because I talk about it, it means I'm not going to do it, right? So there's a difference between thinking it and doing it. And sadly, we had a case the other day where this girl actually did it to her boyfriend's daughter. You know, she drowned her in the bath. I mean, what a horrible construct. I mean, idea. I mean, but then I also got to look at it and go like, what trauma did she go through that she didn't get help for? You know, I don't see people as criminal. I see people as victims. It's like addicts. I don't see them as addicts. I see them as victims. What are you hiding from? What are you running from? Talk to me. Tell me your story, you know. Prison is the same thing. I've never met a guy in prison that wasn't abused as a child. Never. And I've been on several prison visits. And it's just a sad reality is that we criminalize certain things instead of treating childhood trauma. We could change the world if we just treated childhood trauma. Really, we could. We could end all of this nonsense. So the best thing, I mean, to change the world is change you, and don't, you know, I'm trying to think of a strong enough word. Don't transfer that, which is a very mild word, not the right one, to your children. Just fix you before you even have children. You know, be honest and raw about your life. But unfortunately, as humans, we tend to live in these make-believe worlds of social media, and they tell me that if I get this fancy car, I'll be better, and I get this fancy house. I'd lived that life, you know. I tried to hide from my trauma for the longest time. I bought the house and I bought the fancy cars and I got the 2 TVs and the microwave and the dogs and the cats and the children. Didn't change a thing. I was still deeply miserable, deeply depressed, deeply unhappy, you know, until I heard people talking about what they'd been through, and that in turn gave me permission to start dealing with what I'd been through, and that's where the healing begins.
Martin, thank you so much for being here and for sharing with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite, Kim.
It's a great pleasure. And for the guests out there, whether you're a mother, whether you're a father, and you've been through childhood trauma, please reach out and ask for help. You know, asking for help is not a weakness. It's a strength. The president of a country doesn't stand alone. The president of a country has got advisors around them, because we can't be everything to all people. So reach out for help, contact an organization. If your father has struggled with sexual abuse beforehand, please reach out to Matrix Men or whatever organization is in your area. And let's make the world a better place, because as Martin says, if we can fix the childhood trauma side, we are really going to change the world. Thank you for tuning in, and remember to subscribe to get the next video.